We live in a world where crime is on every corner of the street, much more common than any of us would like it to be. And we live in a world where some of the most notorious criminals are behind bars, yet their terrifying stories linger on, leaving behind a legacy of fear and fascination. From crime lords and ruthless gang leaders to cold-blooded killers and young masterminds of chaos, these individuals have not only shocked the world, but also shaped criminal history with their notorious acts. Let's take a look at some of the most dangerous people in jail today. Before we dive into this list, make sure to leave a like on this video. Also, if you would like to join this month's Star 5 giveaway of a brand new iPhone 16, all you have to do is subscribe to our channel and watch this video until the end to find and comment the hidden message. Good luck. Number 10. Antonio Barbello. Let's start up with one of the worst teenagers in history. Antonio was one of the two teenagers that were responsible for a crime that took the life of an elderly woman. This was a bloody crime in every sense of the word. The town of Shaban Falls was shaken by the murder of the 78-year-old woman who was doubled as Antonio's great-grandmother. Barbara Olson was unalived with a hammer and a hatchet. To think that someone would do that to a relative, after months of trials, Antonio changed his plea to guilty and accepted a decisive plea deal during his sentencing. His lawyer also read a statement where Antonio seemed remorseful for the lives he had destroyed by his actions. Eventually, he was sentenced to life with a chance for parole after 36 years. This will be a long ride until 2048. Number 9. James Fairweather. When you hear the names James Fairweather, what should come to your mind are horrors beyond your wildest imaginations. That gives you an idea of the kind of heinous crime this young man committed. For a young man who had a relatively normal childhood from the time he was born in May 1998 in Colchester, Essex, so how could someone without any signs of difficulty or violence as a child become so unhinged in his adolescence? That's possibly the story of many dangerous criminals currently rotting in jail. James became obsessed with violence at 15, and that led to a series of violent crimes, including assaulting and stabbing two young men as he spread terror across his town. His actions were premeditated and targeted vulnerable individuals. He earned a trip to jail where he was sentenced to life with parole possibility after 27 years, all thanks to his fascination with serial killers. Number 8. Nehemiah Grigo. Nehemiah was only 15 when he committed an unthinkable act that destroyed his entire family. In October 2005, he carried out a violent attack with two different weapons, which led to the death of his parents and three younger siblings. Yes, he basically wiped out his entire family. There were so many layers to this crime, and that's what made it especially difficult was this was from a minor. At first, the juvenile court sought a sentence appropriate to his age. However, this changed in 2019 when the sentence was overturned and Nehemiah was sentenced as an adult. He revealed that he had a deep hatred for his mother, and that was what pushed him to carry out such a heinous crime. Due to its severity, Nehemiah was given 3 life sentences and the possibility of parole after 30 years. Number 7. Conrad Schaefer. Guys, better keep an eye out on your 15-year-olds. That's about the same age that Conrad Schaefer went haywire with an unimaginable display of cruelty. Conrad went on a murderous spree in Osceola County in Florida. It's hard to wrap your head around the fact that this young man would kill 2 people for fun. Conrad was one of 4 accused of killing David Guerrero and Eric Rupnarine for no other reason than that it gave him a twisted sense of pleasure. For about 2 weeks in July 2013, the community lived in fear. The first bullet unalived 17-year-old David near a bus stop while on his way to work. A few days later, the boy forced their way into Eric's home and unalived the 22-year-old. Investigations revealed that Conrad's father bought him a gun just a day before the rampage. Conrad was given 2 life sentences. Number 6. Billy Joe Johnson. Billy Joe Johnson is infamous for his affiliations with supremacist gangs. Billy has never been shy about his life of criminality and violence, and even continued his reign of terror behind bars. He got a life sentence for unaliving his childhood confidant, Scott Miller, after an anonymous TV exposed about his gang went on air. It didn't matter that this was someone he had known for years. Even behind bars, Billy was responsible for the ruthless unalivings of 2 fellow inmates for really petty reasons. In no time, he became known across the entire prison as the most savage inmate. He was also responsible for the barbaric homicide of a child molester. While he awaits the possibility of his death sentence being carried out, Billy continues to be a terror, which was evident from how remorseless he was throughout his legal proceedings. Number 5. Randy Kraft. Sometimes a criminal's childhood doesn't give us an idea of what they could be capable of as adults. Randy Kraft came from ordinary beginnings in California, so it was quite shocking to learn that he was behind some of the most spine-chilling murders in his neighborhood. Randy got the famous nickname the Scorecard Killer for targeting mostly men who he would hunt and do awful things to before unaliving them. He hid his monstrous alter ego beneath a seemingly average exterior with a lot of charm. This predator was called the Scorecard Killer because he recorded his most memorable murders on a scorecard that the police found. When a police officer stopped him for doing an illegal lane change, they had no idea that they had just found the Scorecard Killer. The truth became apparent after the officer found a dead body in his car, and later a search of his home revealed his scorecard and several belongings of the dead men. In prison, Randy still has a reputation as one of the scariest convicts in America. Number 4. Alexander Pichushkin. Several miles away in Russia is Alexander Pichushkin, a dreaded killer that spread terrors both outside and within the prison walls. He is known as the chessboard killer because his infamous Russian serial murderer marked each death on a chessboard. After he was caught, Alexander confessed to nothing less than 63 murders, and there's a huge chance that there could be more undiscovered murders tied to this criminal. Every story is more horrific than the last. Thankfully, he was convicted and handed a life sentence. However, that wasn't the end. Within the prison walls, there are stories of Alexander killing fellow inmates so much that he was deemed dangerous for regular prison population. Therefore, he has to live out his entire life sentence in solitary confinement, and no one wants to be in the same space with this monster. Number 3. Robert Maldi. Of course, this list wouldn't be complete without talking about Hannibal the Cannibal. Robert Maldi unalived 4 people, with one of them taking place in a psychiatric hospital and 2 within the prison walls after he received a life sentence for murder. Although the part about being a cannibal may not be completely true, it's not so far-fetched for such a monster. Right now, he is the longest-serving British prisoner in solitary confinement. Born as the 4th of 12 children in Speke, Liverpool, Robert spent much of his early years with his 3 older siblings in an orphanage before his parents picked them up at the age of 8. There are claims that the physical abuse he suffered from his father may have left deep psychological scars that made him a killer. As a teenager, he was forced to seek psychiatric help after several suicide attempts, and later claimed that if he had listened to the voices in 1970 asking him to unalive his parents, none of the other people would have died. Robert claims that most of his victims were offenders, pedophiles, and rapists. The first prisoner that fell to his brutality was imprisoned for unaliving his wife. Eventually, he became a threat to everyone else within the prison walls and now has to spend the rest of his life in solitary confinement. Number 2. Sarah Pender. Sarah Pender has spent nothing less than 5 years in the Administrative Segregation Unit of the Rockville Correctional Facility, where she is incarcerated as punishment for escaping from prison. She was initially convicted for double murder and would have had quite a time in prison, but nothing is quite for Sarah. In 2008, she made national headlines for embarrassing the prison administrators and the country with an escape from what was supposed to be a maximum security prison. At first, she planned on doing this escape alone, but realized that she needed money and couldn't ask her family members, so she became extra cozy with the prison officer, and together they planned to smuggle her into one of the transportation vans that came into the prison to get fuel from the gas station. The officer would traffic in contraband, Sarah and her friends would sell it for money, and she would go to save up for her escape. The officer saw an opportunity to make more money when he discovered her plans, and they eventually had a relationship. Sarah was labeled America's Most Wanted Woman, and she was on the run for more than 4 months after the escape. Eventually, the nationwide manhunt yielded results, and she was returned to prison, where she stays with no contact with the outside, including visits and phone calls. The officer was also jailed for 7 years. Number 1. Jamie Osuna. There are dozens of unalivings in Kern County every year, but none made headlines as much as the murder of Yvette Pena at a Bakersfield motel in 2011. It wasn't just about the gruesome killing, but the fact that it was done by the heavily tattooed Jamie Osuna, who remained remorseless throughout the legal proceedings. He has a Joker smile and pentagram tattooed on his face, and you could hardly find a spot untouched by ink. Jamie couldn't hide his excitement as he described the thrill he got from unaliving and received a life sentence without parole for this crime. When he received his sentence, there was no iota of remorse, and he even mocked Pena's family with smirking, eye-rolling, and thumbs-up sign as a judge pronounced his sentence. Jamie is also known as the man with 1,000 faces because he has become nearly unrecognizable from his first time he has seen in court more than a decade ago. He steadily added his tattoos, and each introduced a dramatic change in his appearance. However, it wasn't long before he received media attention again, this time for beheading his cellmate, Luis Romero, and wearing a necklace made of his body parts. He's definitely up there with some of the worst inmates in history. And with that, we wrap up today's video. Leave your thoughts about this down in the comments below. Make sure you subscribe and give us a like, and don't forget to turn on your post notifications so you never miss a video from Star 5. Thanks for watching.